You didn't text, you didn't call, you said nothing, and yet he's thinking about you more than ever. Why? Most people assume silence means you're over it, that you've given up. But what if I told you that silence used intentionally is one of the most powerful emotional triggers in a man's mind? See, when you're constantly available, constantly reaching out, you're giving his brain no reason to wonder, no space to feel. Silence creates contrast. And in psychology, contrast creates impact. It forces the mind to fill in the blanks. And that's when things start to shift, subtly at first, then all at once. Your silence becomes louder than your words ever were. Right now, you might be thinking, if I stop reaching out, won't he just move on? That fear is exactly what keeps most women stuck in pursuit mode. Texting first, initiating conversations, over-explaining. But here's the truth. When you go quiet, not out of manipulation, but out of self-worth, his mind starts working overtime. Why did she stop? Did I do something? Is she seeing someone else? Was I just a placeholder? The absence of your energy forces a recalibration in his emotional space. And that is when the real connection or disconnection begins. In this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what happens in a man's mind from the moment you stop reaching out. From confusion to curiosity to craving, you'll understand the psychological shifts in detail. Let's break the silence and expose what it truly means. So what actually happens in a man's mind the moment you stop reaching out? At first, it doesn't register as anything serious. Most men assume it's temporary. He might think you're just busy, tired, or maybe giving him space. There's no panic, no urgency. In fact, if he's used to you being the one who initiates, he may even feel a brief moment of relief. Not because he doesn't care, but because emotionally he's gotten used to your presence being predictable. When you always reach out first, it lowers the perceived value of your attention. It's there, it's easy, it's safe. But silence breaks that pattern. The first 24 to 72 hours are crucial. During this time, his subconscious mind starts noticing the shift, but he won't always show it. Outwardly, he might appear unbothered. He might even act a little colder or aloof if he senses the energy change. This is a defense mechanism, a form of control. If he thinks you're pulling away, part of him wants to look like he doesn't care. But inside, questions start forming. Did something happen? Is she upset with me? Wait, is she really not texting me today? And this is where it gets interesting, because the male brain often processes emotional discomfort after the fact. Unlike many women, who tend to think and feel at the same time, men often feel something later, when the silence lingers longer than expected. That's when doubt creeps in. That's when ego gets bruised. And that's when curiosity turns into mild anxiety. Now he's watching your social media. Now he's rereading old messages. Now he's noticing the absence of your energy. And suddenly he's not sure if he still has your attention. That initial reaction isn't always explosive, but it's real. And it builds. Silence is subtle power. The kind that doesn't knock loudly but shifts the entire dynamic of a connection. And the longer you stay silent, the more his mind starts to loop and wonder what he didn't see coming. Let's go deeper. So now we enter the stage that most women never get to witness because many give in too early. But if you've held your silence long enough, something begins to shift beneath the surface, the panic phase. At this point, the absence of your energy is no longer just noticeable. It's starting to feel uncomfortable for him. What once felt like control now feels like uncertainty. And let me tell you, uncertainty is the beginning of desire. He starts replaying moments in his mind, not just the last conversation you had, but the tone you used, the pauses, the words you didn't say. He starts second-guessing his last message. Was he too blunt? Did he say something wrong? Or maybe were you just pretending to care the whole time? His ego starts to ache, not just from missing you, but from the realization that he's no longer the center of your attention. And that's when panic sets in, not just emotional, but existential panic. The kind that makes him question his worth in your eyes. He might start testing the waters, watching your stories, liking a post, dropping a vague message like, "Hey, just checking in." These small moves aren't casual, they're calculated. They're his way of regaining the control he feels slipping away. But if you stay silent, or respond with calm indifference, it throws him off even more. Internally, he's torn. Part of him wants to reach out, ask you directly, what's going on? But the other part, his pride, fears rejection. So he stalls. He waits. But waiting only makes the silence louder. This is the moment where his emotional patterns start to surface. If he's emotionally mature, he might reach out honestly, express concern, or reflect. But if he's avoidant or ego-driven, you'll see behaviors like hot and cold texting, passive-aggressive comments, or sudden attention-seeking on social media. Some men, in panic, will even begin talking to other women, not because they've moved on, but because they're trying to numb the space you left behind. It's a desperate attempt to fill the void. But here's the truth. No matter how many people he distracts himself with, none of them replace the emotion you gave him. The panic stage is messy, it's rarely logical, and it's where most men realize that they may have taken your presence for granted. It doesn't always result in a grand gesture or a dramatic text. Sometimes it's subtle, a double text, a sudden compliment, a song posted to his story you both loved, but underneath every action is the same message. Where did she go? Why isn't she chasing anymore? Is she over me, or just teaching me something? This is the emotional tension point, the moment where he starts to feel the consequences of your absence, and begins to question what he thought he knew about your connection. Stay tuned, because next we'll explore what happens after the panic, when confusion sets in, and the emotional stakes rise even higher. After the panic has set in, something more subtle, and often more powerful, starts to take over: confusion. This is where things begin to shift from emotional reaction to mental obsession. He's no longer just missing your presence. Now he's actively trying to make sense of what's happening. The silence has lasted longer than expected. His ego, which once told him you'd come back around, is now starting to doubt itself. He wonders if he misread the dynamic between you. Was your attention ever secure? Were you pretending to care more than you did? Or worse, were you never really as invested as he assumed? This is the phase where logic starts fighting with emotion. One part of his brain tells him, she's probably just busy, or maybe she's trying to get a reaction out of me. But the emotional part whispers louder, what if she's done? And that question sits with him. He might start stalking your online activity a little more. When you were last active, who's engaging with your posts, whether you've been somewhere new. He becomes hyper-aware of your silence because he's now fully engaged in a mental loop, trying to solve a puzzle he never expected to receive. But here's what really throws him off: the lack of pattern. Most people respond in predictable ways. He's used to cycles: arguments followed by reconciliation, distance followed by a warm message. But now, nothing. No calls. No late night just checking in texts. No visible signs that you're even thinking about him. That unpredictability creates emotional tension. And tension is where attraction lives or dies. At this point, he may try to test the waters again, but more awkwardly. A meme sent out of nowhere. A comment on something random. Something that feels casual on the surface but underneath says, "Are you still emotionally available to me?" And if you continue to stay silent or respond without warmth, he becomes confused about your intentions, but more importantly, about his own feelings. This confusion leads to reflection. He begins to ask questions he may have avoided until now. Did I value her the way I should have? Was I emotionally available? Why do I suddenly feel unsettled without her energy around? And often this is the first time he's truly evaluating the relationship, not just reacting to it. Confusion is uncomfortable, but it's also transformational. It forces a man to look inward, even briefly, and examine his behavior, his choices, and the emotions he may have been ignoring. And the longer you stay grounded in silence, not cold but composed, the more that confusion begins to work in your favor. Because now it's no longer about whether he misses you. It's about whether he's willing to do something about it. Next, we'll explore how his attention shifts and how he starts watching you more closely than you think. By now, your silence has become impossible for him to ignore. He's gone through the initial relief, the confusion, even panic, but he's still not ready to confront it directly. So what does he do instead? He starts watching you, not in a dramatic or obvious way. In fact, The more unsure he feels, the more silent his watching becomes. And where does that show up first? Social media. He'll start checking your stories, watching every single one, sometimes within minutes of you posting. You may even notice he never misses a post, yet hasn't messaged you once. That's not a coincidence. That's calculated curiosity. He wants to know what you're doing, who you're with, and more importantly, how you're feeling without him. He's looking for signs. Did you post a quote that sounds like it's about moving on? Are you out looking happy with friends? Is there a guy in the background of that video, even if he's just a blur? And here's the thing. He may not like or comment on anything. In fact, the more emotional he feels, the quieter he gets. Because at this point, he doesn't want you to know he's paying attention. He wants to gather information without giving you confirmation. That's his version of control. But behind that quiet watching, there's a mental scorecard being built. He's measuring your absence. He's comparing the you he remembers with the you he sees now. And if you look like you're thriving without him, relaxed, radiant, unbothered, that hits his ego in a way words never could. This is when the tables start turning. Because while he's watching you for signs, what he doesn't realize is that his behavior is becoming the sign. The late night views, the sudden reappearance on your followers list, the random like on a photo from months ago, the accidental view of a TikTok you didn't even share widely. These aren't accidents. They're signals, small digital breadcrumbs he's dropping to see if you'll follow them. And here's where your emotional discipline matters more than ever. If you break your silence too soon, or even worse, start posting for him, he'll feel it. And once he feels he has your attention again, the pressure fades. The confusion ends. He regains the upper hand. But if you stay grounded, intentional, and calm, he stays curious. And curiosity is what keeps him coming back, over and over. Not because he's just checking in, but because now he's starting to realize something he didn't expect. You're no longer orbiting around him. And that realization doesn't just affect how he sees you, it starts changing how he sees himself. Next, we'll explore what happens when he begins turning to others for validation, and what that really means beneath the surface. At this point, your silence has created enough space for him to feel the shift, and for some men, that emotional gap becomes too uncomfortable to sit with. So what does he do? He starts looking elsewhere. Now let's be clear, when a man begins talking to other women after you've gone quiet, it doesn't always mean he's moving on. In fact, most of the time it's not even about those women, it's still about you. He's not connecting, he's distracting. It's a coping mechanism disguised as confidence. This is a phase that catches many women off guard. You've been strong, silent, intentional, and suddenly you see him liking someone else's pictures, maybe even going out with someone new. It stings, it feels like betrayal. But underneath that behavior isn't strength, it's discomfort. He's trying to soothe the tension your silence created by replacing your energy with anything that feels remotely familiar. But here's the truth, no one else is you. At first, talking to someone else gives him a brief hit of validation, a reminder that he still has options. It boosts his ego, numbs the confusion, and allows him to pretend that he's unaffected. But emotional distraction is temporary, and deep down he knows it. Because every interaction that follows yours feels thinner, less layered, less emotionally resonant. He may talk, he may flirt, he may even go out of his way to make sure you see it, posting more, being extra social, appearing unbothered. That's not coincidence, it's performance. He's performing confidence because inside he's still unsettled. Here's where your silence continues to work powerfully. If you react, message him, confront him, or try to prove your value, you reset the game. You return to a dynamic where he holds the emotional power. But if you stay silent, if you remain unmoved, something much more impactful happens. He starts comparing, not just the connection, but the feeling behind the connection. With you there was depth, complexity, emotional stimulation. With others it may be light, surface level, or even performative. And while the excitement of someone new might serve as a short-term distraction, it rarely replaces the emotional blueprint you've left behind. Men don't always realize what they had in the moment, but they feel the absence of emotional safety the second they try to recreate it elsewhere. So when he starts talking to others, it's not always a sign he's over you. Sometimes it's the loudest evidence that your silence is working. Because if he was truly done, if he truly felt nothing, he wouldn't need a replacement. He'd be at peace. Instead, he's restless, searching, comparing, and still, in his own way, thinking of you. Up next, we'll explore what happens when that restlessness turns inward, and he begins to truly wonder, did I lose something real? By this point, you're probably asking the question that haunts almost anyone going through this kind of emotional standoff. Does he actually miss me, or is he just moving on? It's a fair question, and the answer? It's more complex than a simple yes or no, because in reality, many men do both, but not in the way you might think. You see, men are often taught, directly or indirectly, to suppress emotional vulnerability. So when they feel that ache, that void you left behind, their instinct isn't to sit with it, it's to redirect it. They fill their calendar, distract themselves with work, go out more, and yes, sometimes even talk to other women. From the outside, it might look like they're moving on, but internally, the process of missing you is already unfolding. Missing someone doesn't always look like tears or grand gestures. Sometimes it's quieter. It's the long pause before he responds to your last message. It's hearing your favorite song and turning it off halfway. It's scrolling through your photos, but not liking them. It's wondering if your silence means you're gone for good, and not knowing how to handle that. But here's where it gets real. Men don't truly miss what they never emotionally connected to. So if you were genuine, consistent, emotionally safe, but you've now pulled back without bitterness or games, that's the kind of absence that lingers. And when he tries to move on too fast, that lingering feeling becomes louder. At first he may convince himself it's not a big deal. She'll be back. I've got options. I'm better off. But as the days go by and you stay silent, his thoughts shift from confidence to curiosity, and eventually to doubt. What if you really don't come back? What if someone else sees your value before he did? What if his silence cost him something real? These questions weigh heavily on the kind of man who does care, even if he was too emotionally unavailable to show it before. And then there's the emotional tipping point, where moving on doesn't feel empowering anymore. It feels like a loss. That's when the missing becomes real. Not just missing the idea of you, but missing you, your energy, your presence, your impact. Not every man reaches this point. Some stay stuck in ego, in avoidance, in distraction. But the ones who felt a real connection, they don't move on in a straight line. They loop, they wrestle with it, they wonder. So yes, he may try to move on, but that doesn't mean he's not missing you. In fact, the more effort he puts into replacing you quickly, the more likely it is that your absence is echoing louder than he'll ever admit. And next we'll dive into what happens when that echo turns into emotional withdrawal, and whether he's letting go or slowly falling apart beneath the surface. This is one of the most misunderstood stages of male behavior during silence, because it looks on the outside a lot like detachment. But is it really? When a man begins to emotionally withdraw, it often mimics detachment. He may stop viewing your stories. He might pull back from mutual friends. Maybe he stops reacting altogether. No texts, no likes, no random signs of life. It can feel like he's shutting the door for good. But here's what's really happening beneath the surface. Emotional withdrawal is often self-protective, not final. It's not that he doesn't care. It's that he's unsure how to care without losing control. Your silence has triggered something deeper. It's made him feel exposed, vulnerable, or even rejected. And instead of confronting that feeling head-on, many men shut down. They pull their energy inward to regain a sense of emotional safety. It's a pause, a recalibration. He may be trying to convince himself that he doesn't need to care. He tells himself, she's probably already moved on. He may even start crafting narratives that help him feel less vulnerable. Like, maybe she was never really that into me. Or I always sensed something was off. But that's not detachment. That's defense. Real detachment, on the other hand, feels different. It's clean, quiet, complete. A man who's truly detached isn't avoiding your energy. He's indifferent to it. He's no longer emotionally reactive. He's accepted the end. He's not checking your socials. He's not comparing new people to you. He's not overthinking what went wrong. There's a sense of peace, even if it comes with sadness. He's not performing distance. He is distant. The key difference: emotional withdrawal is emotional. It still carries tension, confusion, and often internal conflict. You can feel the energetic push and pull, even if he's not saying anything. It's in the way he disappears, reappears, hesitates, and hides behind mixed signals. With real detachment, there are no signals. The line is simply cut. So how do you know which one you're seeing? Watch for inconsistency. If he seems hot and cold, if his silence is paired with subtle attempts to get your attention, if you sense he's still curious, that's not detachment, that's withdrawal, and it's often temporary. But if he's gone emotionally silent, and nothing seems to bring him back into your orbit, not time, not curiosity, not even the unknown, then you may be witnessing true detachment. And while that's painful, it also brings closure. Understanding this difference is powerful, because it gives you emotional clarity. You stop wondering if he cares, and start recognizing how he processes care. And that shifts the power dynamic, because you're no longer stuck in reaction, you're in observation, you're grounded. Up next, we'll explore how your silence, if maintained with self-worth and grace, can rekindle attraction in the very same man who once pulled away. At this stage, something powerful can begin to happen. If you've held your silence with intention and not resentment, confidence, and not control, attraction begins to return. Not because you played a game or followed a tactic, but because silence, when rooted in self-respect, forces a man to feel something most people avoid: emotional contrast. Think about it. In a world where people are always available, always online, always chasing validation, the woman who quietly removes her energy stands out, not for what she does, but for what she no longer does. She creates an emotional space that makes a man feel the loss, not just of attention, but of connection, warmth, and access. And here's where rekindling attraction really begins: in the emotional memory. Men often fall for you in hindsight, in the quiet moments when no one is texting them goodnight, when no one is asking how they're really doing, when the random conversation they're having with someone else feels flat compared to how you made them feel understood. That's when they start to remember. Silence gives space for those memories to resurface, for your energy to echo. The more grounded and composed you remain during this time, the more powerful the echo becomes. You're no longer chasing, you're not proving your worth, you're simply being, and that energy carries more weight than any long message or emotional plea ever could. But here's the key: it's not silence alone that rekindles attraction, it's who you become during that silence. Are you leveling up emotionally? Are you reconnecting with your confidence, your purpose, your joy? Because that version of you, the one who doesn't need validation, who isn't operating from lack, is magnetic. And whether he sees it through a post, hears about it from a friend, or simply feels it through your absence, that version of you draws him in without saying a word. He starts to wonder if he misjudged you, if maybe, just maybe, he lost something he didn't fully appreciate at the time. This is often when he'll test the waters again. A light text, a comment, a "hey, been thinking about you." Not because he's sure, but because the silence made him uncertain in a way that pulled him back in. And now the power is in your hands, not to play games, but to decide if he is still aligned with the version of you that emerged through that silence. Attraction isn't about chasing, it's about space, tension, curiosity, growth, and silence, when handled with grace and growth, doesn't just make him miss you, it makes him reevaluate how he sees you. That is the foundation of long-term attraction. Up next, we'll talk about what you can do next from a place of self-respect, if and when he returns. So you've held your silence, you've seen the shifts, panic, confusion, withdrawal, maybe even rekindled attraction. Now the big question: what do you do next if he finally reaches out? This is where many women make mistakes. They rush in, eager to fix things, desperate to hear the words they've been waiting for, or afraid that if they don't respond with full emotion, they'll lose him for good. But here's the truth: you don't need to chase. Chasing is exhausting, confusing, and often backfires. It makes you lose yourself and lowers your value in his eyes. Instead, the most powerful thing you can do is respond with intention, calm, clear, and confident. If he contacts you, first take a moment. Breathe. Remind yourself that this is your choice. You're not obligated to jump at the chance or prove anything. The power is in your hands, because you've created space for reflection, both for him and for yourself. When you do respond, keep it simple and authentic. You don't need to explain your silence or justify your feelings. Instead, mirror his energy in a way that respects your boundaries. If he's casual, keep your tone light but warm. If he's emotional, stay composed but empathetic. The goal is to reconnect without losing your footing. This is also a time to ask yourself some critical questions. Is he showing signs of growth? Is he willing to communicate openly? Is he respectful of your space and feelings? If the answer is yes, great, you can begin to rebuild, but on your terms. This isn't about rushing back to the way things were, it's about creating something healthier and more balanced. If the answer is no, or if you feel like you're still doing all the emotional work, it's okay to pause again. Silence isn't just a tactic, it's your tool for self-care. Protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's necessary. Another key step is to continue investing in yourself. The confidence, joy, and purpose you cultivated during your silence are your greatest assets. Whether or not he returns, those things will attract the right people into your life and help you recognize when someone truly deserves your time. Remember, the goal is not to win him back at any cost. It's to create a connection that's authentic, respectful, and mutually fulfilling. And that starts with how you show up for yourself. So when he reaches out, respond like the empowered person you've become, not the person you were chasing after. Your silence was never about making him miss you. It was about reclaiming your own power, your own voice, and your own worth. Now, go forward knowing that no matter what happens next, you are enough, and you always have been.